Welcome to the review series, part 1. So, we have the idea of evolution, but what is it? As mentioned in class, make sure that you guys know it's a change, right, in the phenotype over time. And this is, again, unimaginable amount of time, right? And then the third one is it can only be a change in the population, not the individual. So that's 3. We have 1, 2, and 3. Remember that evolution is a theory. So let's look at the difference between hypothesis and theory. Hypothesis is an educated guess that has to be testable. It's more like an educated um, guess written as a statement. It's not a question, okay? Don't get that wrong. Now, theory has to be well supported and been tested over and over, and then it's meant to be an explanation of a phenomenon that is occurring in the world. So this is a timeline that developed the idea of evolution. So evolution didn't just pop up and was accepted. This idea was developed through many different scientists. And so Darwin published his idea on the origin of species. So the idea of evolution started with James Hudson when he proposed that the Earth is shaped by geological forces that took place over extremely long periods of time. The idea of gradualism. He estimates that the Earth is to be millions, not thousands of years old. So gradual changes. Um, yeah. Then we have Thomas Malthus, who proposed the idea that the human population will grow faster than the space and food supplies needed to sustain it. The idea that organisms must um, compete with one another for the amount of food and space available. So again, 2 ideas. During Darwin's trip around the world, he noticed all the variations of traits among similar species. And variation simply means different physical traits of an individual in the group it belongs. So the giant tortoises and finches varied according to the island each inhabited. These species were able to adapt and to their surroundings. So adaptation is simply a feature that allows an organism to better survive and reproduce. If it doesn't do that, it may not be called an adaptation, it's just an inherited characteristic. And it doesn't benefit it, so not adaptation. Now we see the tortoise shells here based on the area they were found. So there was an intermediate shell, dome-shaped, and then saddleback. Darwin noticed lots of variation of species in nature and on farms. So he saw that breeders were selecting only the largest hogs, the fastest horses, or the cows that produced the most milk, and breeding those with each other. And so he termed this process artificial selection, where humans, so artificial humans, select those variations provided by nature that they found useful or beneficial. So it's human driven, okay, artificial selection. So Darwin used all prior scientists' knowledge along with his own findings and proposed a mechanism for evolution called a natural selection. Darwin made 4 conclusions about how evolution occurs by natural selection: struggle for survival, adaptations, descent with modification, and variation. So the first conclusion was there is a struggle for survival. Competition among members of a species exists for food, living space, and other necessities of life. So the idea of survival of the fittest plays here. Individuals that are better suited to their environment, again, adaptations that enable fitness, survive and reproduce more successfully. And this is where Charles Darwin termed natural selection. Now, this key word here, y'all, fitness, the ability of an organism to survive, number one, and then number two, they must be able to pass on their inherited characteristics that makes them so successful to the next generation. So Darwin's second conclusion is that there are adaptations. Certain variations allow individuals to adapt and survive better in their environment. Those more successful will live longer and share those adaptations to future generations. Therefore, natural selection cannot be seen directly. It can only be observed as changes in populations as previously mentioned. So again, populations, not individuals. What are adaptations? Well, they are inherited characteristics that increases an organism's chance of survival. So anything that is benefiting the organism's survival and that trait being passed on, that's considered to be an adaptation. So again, anything inherited that doesn't allow them to survive better would just be an inherited characteristic. So some adaptations can arise quickly through genetic mutations, but some of those mutations can be deadly as well. So Darwin's third concept is descent with modification. So descent means going from one generation to the next generation over long periods of time. So this is the big concept simplified. So again, species today look different from their ancestors. Each living species has descended with changes um, over time. So that's the concept of descent with modification. So the final conclusion would be that there are variations. And how's this variation made? Many genes have at least two genes or alleles. So animals such as dogs, horses, and mice often have several alleles for traits like body size or coat color. All organisms have additional genetic variation that is invisible because it involves small differences in biochemical processes. And an organism can be heterozygous for many genes, thus, if it's not seen in one generation, then it's passed on to the next generation and potentially could be seen. Well, anyways, that's it for today. Have a good one.